Well, why don't we get started? Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So we move on to Mozart, the first of 7 shows. And, um, this show, we don't really focus on in Mozart. A lot of his very earliest works are really not performed as a child. And I touched in the show about their beginnings, Mozart's beginning and with his sister and the father traveling. So this is going to be an unusual Zoom tonight where we'll talk a little bit about the pieces that I played tonight, but I really wanted to focus on the beginnings of Mozart as a child, and really get really deep into that and listen to some of those early works, and then engage in some discussion. So his father, Leopold, he was a court composer in Salzburg, and was known beyond Salzburg, was known, his music was known, I wouldn't say throughout Europe, but certainly in Vienna and the environs. But in the year before Mozart was born, in 1755, he wrote this treatise on violin playing. That became quite famous, actually. And it had two editions after the initial printing of this book. And it was also translated into Dutch and to French. So it was very, very widely used. And I can say that in performance practice, in people studying original instruments and performance practice, it's used quite a bit. When I was in school at Juilliard, during the Mozart anniversary, the big one at the 250, I think it was 250, when Lincoln Center performed every single piece of Mozart's. I had the opportunity to study with the Mozart scholar, Neil Zaslaw, who's at Cornell. I think he's at Cornell, yes. And we actually did this very obscure divertimento, but we worked directly from Leopold Mozart's treatise in the string playing. I mean, I didn't, I was a horn player. But we were working directly from that text. So it was a very, very important text of Leopold's. So Mozart's born in 1756. He has this older sister, Maria Anna, nicknamed Nannerl, who is a very, very prodigious keyboard player, a wonderful, wonderful keyboard player. And I told the story on the show, the young Mozart, at the age of 3, starts plunking things on the piano, smiles, giggles, and all this stuff, and off he goes. So, I thought I should play, in the beginning of his compositional career, Leopold is all with him, and oftentimes in his in these early manuscripts of Mozart, it's sort of mostly Leopold's hand. There's sometimes shared hand of the manuscripts, but I thought it would be neat to listen to Mozart's K1, which is a set of 6 pieces for harpsichord, which are just kind of interesting. So let's give a listen to them. They're super short, but let's hear. This is Mozart K1 with the harpsichordist Eric Smith. And again, it's just a YouTube recording, but here we go. That's the first. We won't go back to the da capo. So pretty charming, huh?
Yeah, so that was KRKO 1. I'd never
Yes.
heard it before.
Yes, it's never, I mean, it's, why do it? I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
silly.
Well, was he listening to Scarlatti, Couperin, and Rameau, or any? It sounds like it.
I know
You
it's,
hear the genius there already. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
question about it.
yeah, I thought in the fifth one, in the G major minuet, he's using hemiola. And just a reminder, the hemiola, displacing of the beat, he's using that already in K1. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And these pieces that, if you saw on the top, they were found in Nannerl's notebook. So she had a notebook, and these were all written out in her notebook, and they were both in Mozart's and with help from his father. Yeah.
So he could compose all this great music, but he couldn't write yet.
Yeah, pretty. I mean, he's, you know, precocious. He's one of the most precocious humans in history.
I noticed how much more sophisticated he got between age 5 and age 8.
And age 8, that's right. There is a definite leap that happens. You're absolutely right. So you know, they Leopold says, you know what, we're going to take this show on the road with these two kids. And at this point, Wolfgang was also playing a little bit of violin as well. So they would tour and you know, they would switch off. They'd both play harpsichord, and Mozart would play violin. And it was just this show. And I have this article from 1869 from the Musical Times quoted. And it says, before he had completed his 6th year, it was determined to exhibit to the world this youthful prodigy. And his father, with a parent's pride, resolved to display his son's extraordinary powers in the principal capitals of Europe. By these means, he doubtless hoped to reimburse himself for the heavy sacrifices of time and income which he had incurred in the education of his children. Not only did his son command the admiration and applause of the musical world and the public, but he also attracted the notice of the monarchs, who vied with each other in testifying by their munificence to his surpassing genius. So Leopold was very clever and orchestrated this trip and going into these towns and somehow connecting with the aristocracy. And he was quite successful. They first went to Munich and they played for the Elector of Bavaria. And then, you know, that was sort of a run out before they went to Vienna. And they managed to go and meet with Emperor Francis and the Empress Maria Theresa. And they played for them at the Schönbrunn Palace outside of Vienna. And they just captivated the Viennese monarchs. And they were showered with gifts. And there's a famous story about Mozart jumping onto the Empress's lap, wrapping his arms around her and kissing her on the cheek. Very precocious child. And there was another admirer. This would be the Archduchess Marie Antoinette, who was then still in Vienna. And she praised him, and Mozart apparently said to her, quote, "You are a dear good lady, and you shall be my wife." So they have this sensation in Vienna. They stay there for about 4 months, and then they start traveling throughout Germany. And I found a notice from a Frankfurt newspaper about the Mozarts. And it says, a girl of 12 and a boy of 7 will be here to play with incredible dexterity, concertos, trios, and sonatas. And then the boy also of the same on violin. The two children's skill not only astonished the electoral courts of Saxony, Bavaria, and Palatinate, but also afforded exceptional entertainment to His Imperial and Royal Majesty during a 4-month visit to Vienna. So they're already pumping up these kids all over Europe, and they're just wowing all of the monarchs of Europe. They go to Paris, and they play at Versailles for the royal family at Versailles. And I wanted to, you know, there's a lot of attention paid to Wolfgang, but it's important to remember that Nannerl could play. She was very, very, very talented. And I have a quote here about her. It says, His daughter, 11 years of age, plays the harpsichord in the most brilliant manner. She performs the longest and most difficult pieces with an astonishing precision. And so they continue, they go on to London. They play for King George III, who was an amateur musician. And they spent 15 months in England alone, playing and traveling around. And there's another story of Mozart and his skill, saying he was brought an opera manuscript that had 5 parts with 2 vocal lines. And he sight read it perfectly and sang both the vocal lines at once. So he's just, you know, this is why he's Mozart, right? Yeah, so, and they circled back to Vienna. They'd come full circle and they went to Vienna, and now they have this relationship with the emperor. And the emperor mentions in passing, you know, oh, you should write an opera buffa. And he was 12. And so he got to work on this opera buffa, but the emperor wasn't really serious about it because he didn't want to invest all this money in an opera production for this kid writing an opera. So poor Mozart wrote this full opera, and it wasn't premiered because there was no money and no one wanted to put the opera on. But there was also, when he circled back to Vienna, there began let's just say a professional jealousy that started arising with Mozart, with his competitors. And this would come back later in his life to haunt him a little bit when he goes to Vienna. But I thought it would be cool to play an aria from that opera, and it's called La Finta Semplice, which is the pretended simpleton. And this is an aria that is Chi mi vuol bene, whoever loves me. And this is Eva Lind and the C.P. Bach Chamber Orchestra. Again, this is from his opera La Finta Semplice. This is K51. He was 12 years old. Here we go. Oh, come on. There we go. Here we go.
Waiter's always looking.
Derek,
Dan.
Yeah, Derek, would he have written the libretto also in addition to the music, or was
No,
somebody else?
no. They pulled from, back then it was purely Italian libretti. Metastasio was a very famous librettist at the time, the Italian. No, he did not write the libretto, just the
I gotta say, if he did that at the age of 12, I mean,
But what'd you think about that?
that was pretty. That was pretty good for. I mean, it was pretty good probably for an adult Mozart. His operas are sublime. I mean, I got the Magic Flute, or Don Giovanni, or Marriage of Figaro. I mean, I love them all. I've seen them all too. But you know, I mean, in fact, my favorite Mozart music is his operas. You know.
That's an interesting point that we will probably circle back to a lot throughout the course of this 7 weeks. His operatic writing is perhaps his most innovative and
Oh yeah.
dare I say important. Very, very important. And that he was so well versed in writing opera over the course of his life.
This aria, for me, what I was struck with is that it was not a self-indulgent aria. I mean, it was done with great taste and restraint. It was really quite beautiful, and for a 12-year-old, quite remarkable. Just really just elegant, even.
Yeah, there's an aesthetic at this time, and Haydn is the same, where they're pleasing the audience, but not pandering. You know what I mean? It's very, very pleasing, but it doesn't pander. And I think that's what you're speaking to. Yeah.
Who was the soprano?
Her name was Ava Lind.
Oh,
Yeah. Not familiar with her, but lovely voice.
yes.
Lovely voice. Lovely voice. So they get back, they get back to Salzburg, and needless to say, Wolfgang is very famous now throughout Europe. And Leopold made a lot of money on this, and a lot of there's a funny mention. I've been reading through the Jan Swafford Mozart biography that came out I believe last fall or maybe 2 years ago. It's a great book, really, really great book. But he was talking about the number of gold watches that they came home with, but all these trinkets and gifts from all the monarchs throughout Europe, and they just had a lot of things. But Leopold I don't want to say hid the money from the family, but he just socked it away. They did not live extravagantly. They eventually moved across town. I don't know if anybody's been to Salzburg. They had both places are there. There's the Geburtshaus, and then across town their later home where the Mozart settled. But he socked away the money and didn't give it to the kids just yet. He was very, very frugal. So in keeping with what Dan was saying, and what I had mentioned on the show, that opera was really the where things were at this period. There was symphonic writing, of course, and everything, but opera is where you made your mark. And Leopold decided to take Wolfgang to Italy. And interestingly, he decided to leave Nonneral home with her mother, and just wanted to go to Italy so that Wolfgang could get an appointment in Italy. And he was admitted to the Accademia Filarmonica in Bologna, which still exists today. And it was recommended by Giovanni Battisti Martini. And it's not a school, it's more of a guild and it just describes a quality to the composer and to the musician. So this was a sort of badge of honor that he could subsequently take with him wherever he went, because people were very aware of the Accademia. And he has this opera premiere in Milan that was very successful. And there's a funny story. While he was in Rome, he went to the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican and heard the Allegri's Miserere. And back then, you could not remove the music from the Vatican So this music only existed at the Vatican, was only heard in the Vatican. It was all self-contained. Mozart went to 2 performances of it, left, and then copied it out and got into a little trouble doing that. So he was, you know, from the word go, he was a very, very precocious guy. But so he gets some opera commissions from that first success in Milan, but does not get that position that Leopold was hoping that he would. So they come back, and they're a little disappointed by what had transpired. And this, you know, he's a teenager at this point. He's 15, 16 during these years. But let's talk about, well, that'll open it up to the symphony. So we heard, which is great, that great Ensemble Haydn Berlin recording of the 28th Symphony. What do you think of the performance of that work?
Oh, how old was he when he wrote it?
He wrote that in 73, 17, 18 years old. Yeah. Yeah. It was you know, and there was a harpsichord in there. Did we all know that he had written almost 30 symphonies by the time he was 18? It's pretty remarkable, and he only had 10 more, and it speaks more to the opera. And those, you know, those late works, I think, starting with the Hofner in 35, it's just incredible masterworks. And then, you know, we have this divertimento, and it was a little unclear in the show. They didn't know what it was. The cover page said divertimento, and that was in another person's hand. But there was wide speculation as to whether this was a symphony or his first foray into string quartet, though it has a double bass, which is a little weird, but he did not signify whether it would only be one on a part or if this is for an orchestra. So this set of divertimenti is sometimes called the Salzburg Symphonies, and that there are 3 Salzburg Symphonies, and this is the 3rd one. But that divertimento, which is K138, he wrote that the year before the symphony. You're seeing a change of, like, there's a touch of his maturity, and even in this early divertimento, and especially the last movement, which is just so ebullient, and I hate to add charming, but he's got that. There's a section in the last movement where he's going into pizzicato. That's just marvelous, just really marvelous. And I thought it was a really great performance too. So he gets back to Salzburg, and he gets the job with his father in the court of Salzburg with very little pay. And this was a new, I didn't get into it, but it was a new Archbishop Colloredo, and he was an Italian, and he was connected with Vienna, you know, through familial connections, but he was an Italian descent. And he really just wanted everything Italian in Salzburg. And it really kind of upset the Salzburgers when he was there. And he was just a very difficult man. So here's Mozart, who's been traveling nonstop, experiencing all these wonderful places, all the success. And this archbishop frowns upon his employees leaving Salzburg. He doesn't want the help to leave Salzburg. He wants them right here. And Mozart gets discouraged by this and resigns, and then they're both terminated from this contract. So Leopold eventually begs for his job back and does get it. He comes crawling back to the archbishop and does get his job, but he sends his son off to get a job, go get a position, and sends his mother with him. And that leads to these escapades in these different towns. He falls in love with a singer. I wrote her name down. Her name is Weber, Aloysia Weber, who was a fairly prominent singer at the time. And you know, he's a teenager, in his late teens. And the father says, go to Paris because you had so much success there as a child. And he really didn't want to. He didn't want to leave this woman, this love, and he didn't like the Parisian music scene. and he just didn't really apply himself to get a job. And over the time that he was there, his mother got sick and passed away, and his father held it against him, frankly. And it wasn't just this instance where there seems to be a break in the father-son relationship, but you have to understand that with the prodigies, that the parent, you know, has such a firm hold on the child. And this is sort of the beginning when Mozart is traveling with his mother, and has his own interests. He's discovering his own interests. He's discovering love, and all these things. He's starting to break away from that, you know, sort of iron fist of his father controlling his life. And they would always be struggling with that dynamic in their relationship from then on. But he writes this piano sonata after his mother dies. And what did we think about Blehash's performance?
Well,
I liked it very much. He didn't load up the music with anything external. It was just very straightforward, so that you could hear Mozart's craftsmanship in the music. So I liked his playing.
Yeah,
I agree. I thought it was a wonderful performance, and here too. I mean, we heard it in some of the earlier Blehash's poems, some of the strengths of his use of rhythms and sonances. But here too, there were certain moments. It's a wonderful sonata. I mean, it's really one of the most profound of the sonatas that he wrote in kind of in mourning. But it was a very revelatory performance for me in hearing how he played it. You found new things in terms of where he was pausing certain stresses on certain notes that came as almost as a surprise, and it was just right and beautiful. So I agree with Gary. It was a beautiful performance.
Yeah, not a lot of, I agree with Gary too about not much, you know, rubato in Mozart, dare I say, you know, you never want to see that, but no, very, very simplistic. If I were to criticize it, I would say that I somehow was seeking a lighter touch in the playing. But that would be my only real quibble with it. I thought, you know, again, just like David, you said, it's very finely shaped and voiced, very, very lovely. Yeah.
You know, you talk about a lighter touch. I remember thinking back at the first page of the music. It doesn't look light. It's, you know, the chords are intentionally those A minor, the triads. It's there's a kind of sense of weight to it, even in the impressions created by the printed page. So I thought that he was true to that.
Yeah, I'm speaking more to the articulation, I think, than the character of it. I mean, that was my impression, but I think it was a very, very good performance. I wanted to play a piece from that same period. His sonata, his violin sonata in E minor, which is K304. The piano sonata is 310. And it's an unusual piece. It's got only 2 movements, both in E minor. And I wanted to play the second movement for you. It's Nicola Benedetti and Alexei Grinyuk. And the second movement is it's marked tempo di menuetto. Okay, and I want us to listen to that and just keep that in mind when we hear it. And let's talk about it. Here we go. So not your typical end to a sonata. What can you tell me about that?
Aside from the fact that it was incredibly beautiful,
It was
and there was a
very
lot of rubato
vocal.
in there too, Derek.
Yeah.
There was.
There was a lot of rubato, which made that piece.
Yeah, I agree. But what struck me is how it's like a song without words. It was so vocal. You could hear the Mozart writing opera. You could hear a soprano singing that.
So,
Yeah.
Sort of a lament.
Had a lot to say.
Hmm.
With minor and major and minor again. Almost childlike in its simplicity.
Yeah, but the thing, it's funny. I wanted to talk a little bit about the form because it is a rounded binary. It's an ABA. It's got minor, major in the middle, and then minor. But he doesn't give you the full theme when he comes back. And when he gives you the major, it's still sad. The major is not this largely contrasting sunny major to give you any sort of respite. It's major and sad. It's amazing. It's really, really amazing.
so Derek, again, what were the circumstances of the composition of that piece?
He wrote this around the same time as the piano sonata, just after his mother
Oh.
passed.
Okay.
Just after his mother passed.
Yeah, it speaks to me very much of a child and sadness and a little less sadness and back to the sadness.
Yeah. But just, even at the time, this was, 1778, this is how he's ending a sonata. He just dispenses with the last movement of the sonata.
He was probably in mourning.
Yeah. Yeah. But still unusual for the time. Yeah. So just marvelous. And you see, we just went from that these little plunky harpsichord pieces, to this opera aria that he writes at 12. And then you come to the piano sonata and this piece, and you see the just incredible development that happens over the course of 10 years. It's amazing. It's amazing. And there's more to come. Any other thoughts about tonight? Well, thanks everybody. Got a great show near and dear to my heart. Next week, we're going to be focusing on wind repertoire, featuring the C minor serenade, one of my truly, truly favorite all-time pieces. So have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. So long, everybody.
Okay.
So long.
Bye.